Hi, and welcome to the To Be Read podcast, where we give honest reviews on viral books you may see on social media and popular book review websites. This is Chris.
In Carison, and on today's episode, we will be discussing When Love Gives You Lemons by Steven Salvatore. So cozy on in, and let's see if you should add this book to your TBR shelf. Hello, everyone, and happy June. Happy Pride Month if you celebrate. And hope you guys have been having a wonderful month so far. Coming in with the last day of June with this episode, but we made it in, so that's all that matters. As usual, we're going to read the synopsis of the book and then we're going to say what our thoughts and opinions are, give our star rating, give our spicy star rating because this was a romance book, and then we'll tell you if we think you should add this book to your TBR shelf. Okay, so here is the synopsis for When Love Gives You Lemons by Steven Salvatore. Ever since he was a kid, Fielder Lemon's large, opinionated Italian American family has lived next door to Ricky DeLuca and his large, opinionated Italian American family. For almost as long, Fielder has known that he wants to marry Ricky one day, and he thought Ricky felt the same way until Ricky breaks up with Fielder, saying he needs to figure out who he is on his own. 1 year later, Fielder is asked to be one of the best men in his cousin's destination wedding on the Amalfi coast in Italy. But there's a twist. His cousin is marrying Ricky's sister. Fielder hasn't talked to or seen Ricky once during their last entire terrible year, but he hasn't given up on his first love quite yet. And isn't a wedding in an Italian lemon grove the perfect setting to rekindle the relationship? Except Ricky might have already moved on. Now, Fielder has less than a week to win Ricky's heart while also trying not to ruin his cousin's wedding. But if there's one thing Fielder knows, it's that when life gives you lemons, take a bite. So, with only 183 ratings, this book did come out May 13th of 2025. So, it's been out for a month and a half. It is at 4.05 stars on Goodreads. Um, so this has been our
4.05.
lowest like amount of ratings that has been in a book, but not our lowest rating of a book, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So Chris, what did you give this book?
I gave this book 3.5 stars.
Okay. I gave it 3 stars, so
I feel
we're
like
about
the
the same.
writing was a little bit rough at times and a little repetitive. Um, but after kind of understanding, um, oh gosh, his name escapes me now. The main voice of the entire book,
Fielder.
Fielder. God. After understanding Fielder and his character and like being an influencer and stuff like that, like it kind of made a little bit more sense, but I do wish that there would have been a little bit more like of a palette for different descriptive words for the clock. We
I
should have
legit
we should have
sent
like
Chris.
put
I
a
legit sent Chris
counter.
a. I know. For our listeners, when I started reading this before Chris did, and I I was 2% into the book, and I sent her a screenshot of just one page, and in one paragraph, the clock was used 4 times. Now, give background what this is. Fielder is an influencer on basically what TikTok is, but due to copyright infringement, I'm assuming the author couldn't actually write TikTok in the book, so he just called it the Clock app. Um, which he also made light of the fact that there's potential for TikTok to be banned in America. So I'm assuming he wrote this towards the beginning of the year or last year. because that was when all that was happening. So, um, yeah, the repetitiveness was a little much. But um, one thing we forgot to put before we started was our spicy rating.
Oh
So,
yeah,
what would you? It's a
like
YA,
point
100%.
0.5.
Yeah, there was like no spiciness,
They
which is
talk
totally
about
fine.
they talk about the LGBTQ community and how like some people feel as if like they surround themselves with like the ideals of like their sex life being part of their
Mhm.
identity, and I think that that was actually a really interesting subject for this book to touch on, because I have a lot of friends in that community and there are a few that that is part of their identity, and then there are a few that it's just like they don't ever talk about their sex life at all. But I do
Mhm.
find that really interesting that like Fielder kind of, I'm gonna say identified with like the fact that like his his sex life was kind of important to like who he was as an influencer.
Mhm.
And so I find that really interesting that this author chose to touch on that,
Yeah.
and that they actually had the opposing argument in this book too,
Yeah.
you know?
Um yeah.
This was definitely YA for sure, because I feel like it was very much of like a coming of age type, like
Yes.
maturing theme.
Yeah. The characters were very young. Fielder himself in the flashbacks was 17, and then in present day he was 18. And Ricky is a year older than him, so Ricky was 19. And you could definitely tell with how Fielder acted as a character that he was 18.
Yeah,
He acted very immature at some points.
yeah. The like on the plane, be like making this whole scheme to
Yeah.
win Ricky back while his boyfriend's there kind of thing. It was just like so cringe.
Yeah, that was my biggest flaw in the book was you could see the immaturity showing on the page of the characters
Yeah,
and the fact that the whole plan for Fielder to win Ricky back was to basically get Ricky to break up with his boyfriend at this wedding.
yeah.
And it turned out like Ricky's boyfriend wasn't the best person anyways, but still at the same time I just did not agree with that. I that
I
is
feel
just
like, so I it's not that I felt like Ricky wasn't the best person. I just feel like Ricky needed to figure out himself before including anybody else in his dynamic. And so I kind of, to be completely honest with you, um, by the way, we're going to talk about how this book ends, because for me, this is the reason why I gave this book a 3.5. Um,
mhm.
is I almost kind of wish that neither of them ended up together.
Yeah.
I wanted Ricky to go off and actually find himself and mature and figure out how to be alone.
Do you mean Fielder, not Ricky?
No, Ricky. Ricky was the one who was with Cam.
Oh, I thought Ricky knew himself. I felt like Fielder didn't know himself.
I definitely feel like Fielder started to figure himself out while he was fighting for Ricky, but I
Yeah.
wanted Ricky to say no to both the guys.
Yeah, I
I wanted
agree.
Ricky to be like, "Look, I love you and I want to be with you, but I can't be with you until I can learn that I can be with myself."
Yeah, cuz he jumped from one relationship to another
Yeah,
very
he broke
quickly.
up with Fielder, and then like now he's with Cam and it's been 18 months and he still doesn't even know what he wants. And why should you? You're 19, 20.
This is a hard subject for me when it comes to like age because
I understand that
I was 20
wholeheartedly.
when I got married.
But you also have to remember that these boys grew up next to one another and didn't have the same like childhood that we did.
Yeah.
And you also didn't grow up next to your husband every single day of your life and then go through a moment where you're like, I don't I don't know who I'm going to be without this person and then jump into another relationship.
Yeah. My biggest
Like if
issue,
it was start to finish, they were together this whole time and they were learning how to mature together as a relationship, I feel like I could definitely be on board with that. But jumping from one relationship to the next when you also brought somebody to Italy with you?
yeah, he shouldn't have brought him with him.
Yikes.
Yeah. My big thing that I had an issue with this plan to get Ricky back was the fact that, like, Ricky said he wanted both of them to figure out who they were because they had grown up with each other. They had never known what life was like without each other. And I can understand that when you're 19, 18, 19, and you've grown up with someone your whole life.
Hmm.
However, Fielder, when they had seen each other for the first time, didn't know what he wanted with his life. And he talked about that. And he said he was going to have to just kind of fake that he knew what he was doing with his life in order to run Ricky over. And I just did not agree with that
Yeah, that's also
because that's not
icky.
being your true self.
Hmm.
And the whole reason they broke up was for them to, mainly for Fielder to know what he wanted to do with his life. Fielder wanted to be an influencer when they broke up. And at the time, his channel didn't have that many followers. And so Ricky was like, you can't make this your job. Um, and Fielder ended up actually making his channel grow. And he became an influencer. So that was kind of his passion at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But he, again, admitted he didn't know what he wanted to do with his life because he didn't go to college. He took a year off after graduating, and kind of his mom was like, you have a year to figure out what you want to do.
Yeah.
Um,
I will say that I love what Fielder ended up doing with his channel
yes.
and that he kind of
Yes.
found his niche instead of
Yeah.
just being like a generic food reviewer
Yeah.
influencer. So I love that. I love that he got to
Hmm.
kind of like mold what he was doing into something that actually mattered.
Yeah. You got to see his character growth on the page,
Yeah.
100%, in the span of a week. But he did grow in the span of a week really well.
Yes.
You didn't get to see much of Ricky growing. You did get some chapters in Ricky's point of view, but it was mainly told in Fielder's perspective, so we don't really know
Yeah.
if Ricky grew or not that much of as a person.
Yeah.
Um,
Do you feel
so what?
like, since we kind of skipped it, do you feel like the book matched what you had said for the book cover?
Yes,
I feel
yeah,
like you
100%.
pretty much had it like spot on.
Didn't I say, like, I said Greece, but I mean, kind of, I don't, I knew it was a foreign country, okay?
Yeah.
And the Amalfi Coast does look like that. So
Yeah. I
I was
was
pretty
not
proud of myself.
close.
No, you were not. You said they bumped into each other while he was running in the park.
With his jorts on,
Yeah.
khaki shorts, quartz.
I feel like the cover did a great job with this book.
Yeah, I will say that Ricky on the cover looks spot on to what I pictured him as, but Fielder does not.
Yeah, no.
Fielder comes
Well, I
off like a
mean,
jock to me in that picture,
yeah.
whereas like I envision kind of like a more scrawny, like nerdy brunette boy.
Yeah.
But either way, uh, the dynamic between the two of them, how they could literally talk about anything, I kind of loved. I kind of felt bad for Cam, but I do feel like Cam needs to work on himself and go to therapy
Yeah,
for
he
his
cheated on
childhood trauma.
Ricky.
Yeah, and then is upset about Fielder? Screw you.
I know. Again, that just shows the immaturity of the
Yeah,
characters and their ages.
yeah, absolutely. Uh,
What
but
was your favorite part?
my favorite part about the book, honestly, was when uh, Fielder was at the, like, oh god, the lemon orchard thing.
The Lemon Grove?
Yeah, and he essentially decided that that was going to be his story, and like how much he fell in love with just like wanting to like learn.
Hmm.
I also really loved the part where uh, the chef like got angry with him
Yeah,
because
kind of put him in his place.
yeah, because I'm sorry, but I mean, even as a photographer, like views only get you so far, and it doesn't matter. Like I that chef, anybody, like they're creating because it's their art form, not because they're here to let somebody else take the rap for giving them views.
Yeah.
And so I think that sometimes we lose the understanding that somebody took the time to not only learn this craft but then to perfect it. And I
Hmm.
felt like that moment I was just like, yes, yes, I totally get this, man.
Yeah.
So I loved that. But yeah, definitely the Lemon Grove was like my all-time favorite thing. Just being able to see like essentially like in my brain, I'm like watching this as like a movie in my head, right? And I just see
Hmm.
like the light bulb go off and it's just like, oh my gosh, he's going to do something beautiful with that. I'm so happy.
I know. It makes me, that whole scene honestly made me want to go to Amalfi just so I could try the lemons because
Yes.
I love lemons. Okay. Give me any lemon dessert and your girl will eat it and probably want another one of it because I love sour and I love lemon. Okay. So, them describing eating a lemon like it was an apple, I was like, sign me up. Sign me up.
No, I completely agree. Also, craved lemon things this entire book.
I know. I want a limoncello. I've never actually had one before.
Yeah, same. I will say that I do not like Ricky's catchphrase.
When love gives you
Lemons take a bite.
lemons, take a bite. Yeah.
I feel like it could have been better.
Yeah. It's okay. I think
I
line
get
like
it
that.
because he's a like food review person, but like, you know,
I usually don't like catchphrases with anything, to be honest. They're overused.
I just wasn't a fan. And every time it was used, I like essentially was brought back to the fact that I am reading a young adult
Yeah.
book about an 18-year-old boy who thinks he's in love.
Yeah. My favorite part, honestly, was reading the author's passion about things. You could tell that he was passionate about the tourism and climate change affecting the Amalfi Coast when it came to the whole Lemon Grove story and all of that. You could tell just reading it that this author has a passion about that. And if he doesn't, he portrayed that he did really well because it was really well written and really informative. Um, because I didn't know any of that. And I felt like I was actually learning something when it came to a nonfiction book, which was really cool. Nonfiction, when it came to a fiction book, which was really cool. And you could also tell that, of course, he was passionate about the LGBTQ community. The author himself, I think he's married or he's just, or he's in a relation. I know he has a partner. Um, so I looked at his Instagram, but when it came to the whole scene with them finally confronting Ricky's cousin and kind of just like telling her to shut up or get out, um, he poured his passion into informing the reader about how people in the LGBTQ community are portrayed on social media and even just in normal everyday life. And it was cool to see his passion about that as well.
Yeah, I do feel like I learned some things, and I thought the whole like Lemon Grove family thing was gonna be like so like uppity and gross to read about, but it actually ended up being my favorite part of the book.
Mm-hmm.
So, I do love that, and I do feel like you can tell this author brought to light some issues that are very much like issues in this world. And so
Yeah,
I do find that I do find that like endearing.
yeah. Especially because you did say this would be I think you said this, but I agree. This would be a really great book for someone who is 18 or 19 and in the LGBT community or someone who is wanting to become an ally and learn about it. This would be a great book to read for that.
Yeah, completely agree.
So yeah. Who was your favorite character?
Maddie.
Mine too.
Yeah,
Maddie was Fielder's cousin, and he was hilarious. He
also
was like
young.
yeah, he was younger than Fielder.
Yes,
Um,
very much so.
so his immaturity, because he was like what, 16, 17,
Yeah.
something like that. And he was just hilarious. And I was so happy that he got together with the Lemon Grove son.
Yeah. I also I don't know. I just thought I loved how they kind of brought Maddie in to bring a little bit of humor through like those thick and heavy moments.
Mm-hmm.
So like you just had like a thick and heavy moment, and then all of a sudden, the next scene, Maddie and Fielder are talking,
Yeah.
and so I feel like it definitely brought like a little bit of like lightheartedness to the book, while also like every time Maddie was part of anything, I chuckled at some point. So
Yeah.
yeah, he was good comedic relief, but also just like obviously young and figuring himself out.
Mm-hmm. Oh, no. I think it's important that people also know that um, Fielder and his whole family, like his cousins, both of his cousins are from two different aunts, and none of their dads are in the picture. So their families are very close, which I feel is like a very typical Italian culture thing. Um, my husband's best friend is Italian, so his family is somewhat close as well. So I feel like, and they're big and loud. He's told me stories of like family gatherings and then reading an Italian American family gathering that had to be with Fielder's family. I was able to make a connection there. Um, his mom and aunts are crazy.
Yeah.
They called his mom and aunts the coven, and he definitely had some daddy issues. Not Ricky. Ricky's dad was great
Yeah.
and in the picture. It was Fielder's dad who was never there.
Yeah.
Well, didn't Fielder's dad die?
I I
Am I thinking that right?
I I believe that that's true. Yes.
Because his parent, like when he was little, his parents separated, and then his dad years later came back in the picture, and then he got sick with cancer and died, didn't he?
Yeah.
Okay. So he had some daddy issues.
Yeah.
It was
Not
talked
like
about a lot.
Cam though.
Huh?
I said not like Cam though.
Yeah, not like Cam.
Cam just had family issues, as in lack thereof.
Yeah, yeah.
And so abandonment issues is probably more along the lines for
Hmm.
him, but both of them,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's okay.
So, did anything surprise you?
No?
Me either. It was all fairly predictable. I knew that by the end of the book that they were going to be back together. It just kind of like led that way the whole time.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, nothing surprised me.
Yeah, me either. If anything surprised me, it would have been the fact that um the date that they were supposed to set up for his cousin and Ricky's sister, that like Ricky was like kind of took over and made it a date for him and Fielder. I guess that was the only surprising thing.
Yeah,
And to be honest, it wasn't that much of a surprise. I kind of figured that was going to happen.
yeah,
But
something along those lines.
yeah.
Okay, yeah.
So would you recommend this book? Would you add this to your TBR shelf?
I personally would not, but if I was in the ages between like 16 and 18, absolutely. I think that it would be a great book for young adults.
Same. I 100% agree with that. Possibly, I personally wouldn't read it again. Um, but if it, yeah, if you are a young adult, 16, 18, maybe 19-year-old, you could relate to it
Yeah.
as well.
And
I would,
it's a short book too.
yeah, yeah. I read this in like 2 days. So that doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, I listened
I'm a
to it
fast
in
reader.
5 hours.
Did you like the narrator?
Actually, I really loved the narrator, and they changed narrators between Fielder and Ricky.
Okay.
And I like it when they do that because I feel like it really helps with like keeping those characters in line in your brain.
Hmm.
Because I listened to this book at 3 times speed,
Oh,
and
wow.
so
That was fast. You normally do too.
so I do anywhere from 1.7 to 3 times depending on the narrator, because if they're a slow talker, then I can do 3 times speed and it sounds fine with me. But I
Normal.
also am
Hmm.
a professional, like, not actually professional, but like, I've listened to so many audiobooks now that listening at anything less than 1.7 sounds so horrifically slow that I wouldn't even pick the book back up.
Mm.
So um, but I didn't start off at 3 times speed, but as I started listening to it, their dictation was so easy to like follow that I was able to boost it up and it didn't really feel like much difference. But
Nice.
I think that they did a really good job, and the voice itself was, it sounded young enough to be believable that they were actually those ages, cuz so many times you're like reading a 19-year-old and it sounds like a 40-year-old man.
I know there's so many times if you read college romances, they don't sound like they're in college
Yeah.
at all.
Yeah.
Especially the girls. The men, I feel like you can get away with. The females, no.
See, and sometimes like the men are what's like really hard for me, especially because like as you get to know their personality, if the voice doesn't sound like the personality that the author's trying to portray, it also ruins it for me.
Mm,
So, I don't know. I feel like because men have generally deeper voices, it's so much harder to like
yeah.
portray, whereas like with women, like if you have a lower voice as a female, I do think that that makes them sound older and more
Hmm.
mature, but as a lady, it's easier for you to get away with faking a higher pitched voice for a younger character without it sounding fake.
Yeah. That's true.
So that's my take. But that's because I listen to a lot of audiobooks.
All right. Are you ready to go to the next what our
Yeah,
next book is?
let's introduce the next one. I think it's your turn.
Yes. So in honor of the 4th of July, even though there's a lot going on in America at the moment. It's still the 4th of July and our country's birthday. So we are going to read. Is this a historical fiction? Is that what this is?
Yeah.
Okay. It is called The Rebellion 1776 by Laurie Halse Anderson. Um, so I'm assuming this is America's rebellion from England. um, and there's not much to go off with the cover. It's literally a young girl with a flag that is
Torn.
torn
Yeah.
in front of her, blowing in the wind.
I feel like I'm with you. That's what it's going to be about. I feel like that's pretty clear. I'll be
Mm-hmm.
surprised if it's not. But this one also came out this year.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think that we're gonna, this girl, whoever it is on the cover, I think that we're gonna follow her, like, day in a life, essentially, or like year in a
Mm-hmm.
life, or whatever, uh, through her story. So seeing it through her eyes. And I
Yeah.
think that'll be really interesting because she's a child.
Mm-hmm. Do you think her dad is fighting?
Ooh.
Like, do you think this girl's dad is like fighting in the rebellion?
I don't know. My brain didn't initially say like parent, but maybe like someone close. Maybe not a parent, but maybe like an older brother or an uncle or like, I don't know.
Grandfather?
Yeah.
I will say, her eyes in this cover are beautiful. They're green. They're very capturing,
Yeah, you can tell she has wavy hair.
captivating. Yeah.
I don't know. I bet you she's a really pretty young girl, whoever it is.
Yeah. What age do you think she is by just
Uh,
looking at this?
10 to
I think
12?
she's like, okay, I was about to say it's like 12 or 13. She looks very young. Watch her be like 19 years old.
Oh no. Yeah, I don't know. But I'm interested, so we'll see
I
how
am
it
too.
goes. Talk about it.
Yeah. So overall, oh, I guess our bingo. We didn't say anything
Oh,
about that,
right.
but the only one we're crossing off is daddy issues. That's literally the only one.
Yeah, so many daddy issues. And this is not the book I would have thought we've crossed that off on.
I know, me either,
But we did
but it's
it.
fine.
And we
We
almost
almost
have a
have,
bingo.
I know, a DNF, which, like, technically you did DNF the last book, but I didn't DNF it, so
Yeah, I
I
feel
didn't
like
feel
we
like we
both
could have
have
crossed
to.
that off.
Kind of like the Hurricane Wars.
Yeah, man, that was bad.
Yeah.
But we almost have a bingo. And then we're close to having a second one with our first 5-star read and making us cry.
Yeah.
But I don't think we're gonna get that 5-star read.
I don't know. It's going to be hard.
Yeah. It's fine. But all right, guys, that's all for today's episode. Um, in synopsis, uh, if you are a young adult, we would recommend you to read this. Otherwise, I don't think so.
Yeah. Maybe just
I
pass.
think, yeah, I think people our age and older would think the immaturity would be a big turnoff to them.
Yeah, I would agree.
But, all right, guys, thank you for joining us on today's episode. Make sure to follow us on all of our social media, TikTok and Instagram, and make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel to never miss a video or podcast episode or whatever you want to call it. But we'll chat with you guys next time. Bye, guys.
Bye.